to the United States Coast Guard Cutter Smilax. I'm Lieutenant Commander Reno Eckler, the Executive Officer of Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet. I will be your Master of Ceremonies today. For those of you carrying cell phones or pages, I request that you either turn them off or place them in the silent mode. Already on stage is Reverend White. Will the guests please rise for the arrival of the official party, the national anthem, and the invocation. Military guests in uniform, please remain covered and follow my lead for salutes. Now, Smilax arriving. Now, Acushnet arriving. Now, Commander Pacific Area and Commander Defense Force West arriving. And salute. Color Guard, present the colors. Hand salute.
Color Guard, odds and move. Carry colors. Ready, cut. Mark time, march. Forward, march. Mark time, march. Company, halt. Counter march, march. Present colors.
Post the colors.
Color Guard, post the colors.
Ready, two. Chaplain White will offer the invocation. Personnel in uniform remain covered.
Bow your heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today in humble gratitude and appreciation for your many blessings that you, O God, have bestowed upon us. We stand here today surrounded by the beauty of your creation and the provision of your handiwork, and we are honored by your presence. We have assembled today to remember, honor, and appreciate the service of the U.S. Coast Guard Acushnet and the many men and women who have walked her decks and sailed her the many miles across the oceans and seas. Lord, you, the master of the seas, have been with the Acushnet over the 67 years as she has faced the guns of her enemies, traversed the waters across the globe, and now ending her service in the beautiful, challenging waters of Alaska. Her duty of protecting our country, saving lives, preserving our environment, and enforcing our laws has been carried out with distinction and is now complete. I ask now for your blessing and guidance as this decommissioning ceremony proceeds, that what is done and the words spoken during these formalities and later during our time of fellowship will give proper honor and gratitude to the 31 commanding officers and the many men and women who have faithfully served their country on board the Acushnet. I pray for a special blessing on Captain Mark Frankfurt and his crew as they carry out their duties during these final days. Enable them to work with expertise and enthusiasm and always under your protective hand. I ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Will the guests please be seated? Ship's company, parade, rest. The Coast Guard's oldest commissioned cutter award is presented to the cutter in active service holding the earliest date of service. With this honor goes the distinction of displaying gold hull numbers. Acushnet has held this honor since 2007. Today, Acushnet will pass the title of oldest commissioned cutter to Smilax. At this time, the commanding officer of Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet, Captain Mark Frankfurt, will present the oldest commissioned cutter plaque to the commanding officer of Coast Guard Cutter Smilax, Chief Warrant Officer Scott Mack.
Admiral Brown, Captain Frankfurt, distinguished guests, and Acushnet crew, good afternoon. We have many fine traditions in the Coast Guard. Celebrating and recognizing the oldest commissioned cutter, our Queen of the Fleet, is one of them. The hulls are adorned with gold numbers to recognize their long service life, and the ship's name celebrated. Today, the tradition is passed on from Acushnet, who relieved Storis, and before her the fur. And now the watch is relieved by Smilax. But the true heart and soul of this tradition is all the crews who breathe life into these fine ships. Crew of Acushnet, past and present, thank you for your 67 years of service. We aboard Smilax proudly relieve Acushnet and look forward to carrying on the illustrious tradition and duties as the Queen of the Fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Warrant Officer McAloon. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Commander Pacific Area and Commander Defense Force West, Vice Admiral Manson Brown.
Platoon Commander, please place your crew at ease.
Ship's company, at ease.
What a great looking crowd. Distinguished guests, including two of my colleagues, Rear Admiral Chris Colvin, the commander, 17th Coast Guard District, and Rear Admiral Tom Ostabeau, the Coast Guard's chief engineer and the prospective commander, 17th Coast Guard District. Finer words have never been spoken. Congratulations again, Tom. To all of our assembled elected officials or their representatives, to our community leaders and those that support the Coast Guard, certainly Captain Frankfurt, these officers, chiefs, and crew of the mighty Acushnet, members of the Alaskan community, and of course, members of Team Coast Guard, especially the former sailors of Acushnet, including several former skippers that are with us here today. If I can ask them to stand. Captain Vose, Preston, Inman, and Wiedenhoft. And if I could ask any other, keep standing please, gentlemen, any other former Acushnet sailors to please rise and be acknowledged. What a great looking crowd. Thank you all for your service. Please be seated. You know, as the Coast Guard's Pacific Area Commander, I'm also the Coast Guard Pacific Fleet Commander. So it's that in this spirit that I welcome you all. Now, before we celebrate Acushnet and her crews, I think it's appropriate that I take a moment to reflect on the tragic events occurring in Japan today in the aftermath of that terrible earthquake and tsunami. I've spent most of the night working with the 13,000 sailors throughout Pacific area, trying to make sure that we were prepared for the tsunami that continues to ravage nations throughout the Pacific Rim. And I really want to lift up the sacrifice and the service of those sailors and our community partners to making sure that America was ready. In many ways, I think that we dodged a bullet. It's time now to shift our focus as a country to our neighbors in need over in Japan as they go through that terrible ordeal. The Pacific Ocean is really the tie that binds us as nations and human beings together, and it's appropriate that we take a moment to extend our thoughts and prayers to our Pacific neighbors during this terrible time. Thank you for your prayers. You know, I'm honored to join you to celebrate the distinguished service of Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet and the men and women who served in her. Acushnet has over 67 years and 1 month of combined service to the United States. In a world where the average naval vessel is considered old at 10 to 15 years service, Acushnet truly has lived 5 or 6 lifetimes. She received her Coast Guard commission on August 23, 1946, and retires today after 63 years and 200 days of valiant service to our Coast Guard. Now, by comparison, the last Queen of the Fleet, Storis, had 63 years, 135 days of service. And even back in our history, the legendary revenue cutter Bear, which served from 1885 to 1929 and was recommissioned from 41 to 44, had a total of 47 years service. So that puts Acushnet in rarefied air indeed. I want to extend special thanks to Lieutenant Kurt Fizstick, Acushnet's operations officer. He really has compiled some incredible statistics that help me amplify the history of this truly magnificent ship. Kurt, I want to thank you for bringing to life the Commandant's guiding principles of honoring our profession. Well done, shipmate. How about a hand for Kurt? Now, as Kurt's researched, the Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet's historic materials and memorabilia filed in a historian's office at Coast Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C., is contained not in a few binders or boxes, but in volumes and volumes of documents, papers, and artifacts. So allow me to just summarize some of the most significant events aboard Acushnet in chronological order. First, let me address some of the debate about the origin of the name Acushnet. We believe the name is taken from the Kushina tribe of northern Massachusetts. When the land in the area was sold to European settlers, they called the area Acushnet, or land of the Kushina. The name Kushina best translates to the place to get to the other side. So considering Acushnet's long and dedicated service in the Pacific, the Atlantic, back to the Pacific, the Caribbean, and then back to the Pacific yet again, she truly does embody that concept of getting to the other side. Acushnet began her life as USS Shackle, and Shackle's keel was laid on October 26, 1942, at the Basalt Rock Company in Napa, California. She was commissioned as a fleet rescue and salvage vessel on February 5th, 1944. Some of you weren't even born yet. To bring some perspective to the changes that this Queen of the Fleet has witnessed during her existence, consider this. The average salary in the U.S. in 1942 was $2,059 per year. The average cost of a car was $925, and gasoline was an incredible 19 cents per gallon. The 40s generation ate dinner together and then gathered in their living rooms to listen to greats like Jack Benny, which was the most popular show on radio at the time. Although television had been invented, most families didn't own one. An up-and-coming movie producer named Walt Disney released Dumbo in 1942. The attacks on Pearl Harbor the previous December really sharpened the focus of the workers in that California shipyard. Every weld, boat, and detail was assembled with renewed American pride and purpose, undoubtedly contributing to the longevity of this great ship. Acushnet's first days of military service were in this war-torn world, and plank owner sailors wore heavy wool uniforms that you see in museums today. Families were asked by the government at the time to make do and mend, as food, clothing, material, and other items were rationed in the war effort for the boys over there. During her Navy service from 1944 to 1946, Shackle served during the invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. At Okinawa, she completed 55 salvage and rescue operations on larger craft damaged by kamikaze attacks. Shackle was assigned to mine clearing operations in the East China Sea, where over 200 enemy mines were either sunk or destroyed. Shackle also performed the vital task of clearing mines from the docking areas at the Yokosuka Naval Base in Tokyo Bay. During these operations, Shackle suffered no casualties and no damage. The crew was awarded 3 World War II battle stars, the World War II Victory Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, and the American Campaign Medal, as well as the Navy Occupation Service Medal. On August 23, 1946, Shackle was commissioned as United States Coast Guard cutter Acushnet and homeported in Portland, Maine. Now, the lean years of the 1940s gave way to the free market 50s, as scientific and mass production advances began to change the way that people lived. By early 1950, 8 in 100 homes now had televisions, and people would line up rows of chairs in their living room and invite their neighbors over to watch. Although those at home in this rock-around-the-clock generation had many luxuries, the amenities for the crew aboard Acushnet remained relatively unchanged. Now, I can only imagine that generational differences led to spirited exchanges between those tough, hardened crew members from the World War II era and the newly minted enlistees who emulated folks like James Dean and Elvis. Unfazed by these differences, Acushnet and her crew continued their impressive and historic service. While in Portland, Acushnet became an instant friend to the maritime community, performing search and rescue missions and serving as part of the International Ice Patrol. A Life magazine article in April 1957 noticed that Acushnet and the International Ice Patrol were warning all shipping away from the worst encroachment of big icebergs that year. In 1952, 2 tankers, the SS Pendleton and the Fort Mercer, broke up in a fierce storm off of Cape Cod, and Acushnet rescued 18 men from the stern of Fort Mercer in heavy seas. On Christmas Day in 1961, Acushnet rescued the entire crew of the seagoing dredge Cartagena when she became disabled in 30-foot seas and 75-knot winds off of Cape Cod. And in the fall of 1967, Acushnet went south, where, foreshadowing the missions to come, she rescued a Cuban refugee from a pleasure craft 50 miles south of Key West. In the late 60s, the nation was engaged in the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. Mass protests defined a nation undergoing radical change. Acushnet, while not undergoing such momentous change, was nonetheless changing. And in 1968, July, she was designated as an oceanographic research vessel, WAGO, and relocated to San Diego. She spent the next 3 years attached to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. On 11 extended deployments through June 1971, Acushnet serviced oceanographic research buoys in support of NOAA's National Data Buoy Center. And in July 1971, she was transferred to Gulfport, Mississippi to continue her oceanographic research with the National Data Buoy Center. In August 71, Acushnet, then affectionately known as Noah's Ark, arrived in Gulfport with a crew of 64 and a 100-ton buoy that she was towing from San Diego. Once established in Gulfport, Acushnet returned to search and rescue. And in the early 1970s, along with the cutter Dependable, she fought a fire on the tanker Key Trader after it collided with the Norwegian ore ship Bonnie and burst into flames. For this action, both Acushnet and Dependable were awarded the Coast Guard Unit Commendation. Between 1975 and 1978, finally starting to catch up with my start in the Coast Guard, Acushnet also displayed exceptional agility. She conducted search and rescue missions in the Gulf of Mexico, hosted the first marriage on a Coast Guard vessel since the mid-19th century, and recorded her first drug seizure, 18 tons of marijuana. From May to June 1980, Acushnet participated in one of the Coast Guard's largest operations in history, the Mariel boat lift, involving thousands of Cuban refugees. The cutter assisted 35 boats, aided 120 refugees, and served as the mothership for the countless Coast Guard small boats that contributed to that massive response. The remainder of the 80s was defined principally through the cutter's drug interdiction mission. And in 1984, while participating in Operation Wagon Wheel, and some of you remember that, Acushnet made 3 seizures in a 10-day period, confiscating a total of 52 tons of marijuana. Between September and November of the same year, she went on to confiscate 76 tons of illegal narcotics from 7 vessels. Acushnet moved to Eureka, California in July of 1990. During Operation Sand Trap in July 91, Acushnet intercepted the sailing vessel Malakula, carrying 12 tons of hashish from Indochina. Later, she pulled 32 bales from the burning and sinking vessel, despite the efforts by the smugglers to scuttle that vessel. In October 1991, Acushnet made her first voyage to Alaska. The cutter diverted for 2 weeks to coordinate anti-pollution efforts and diverted again to save the crew off the 518-foot Hyundai No. 12, which had ran hot aground near the Shamogan Islands. In 1998, Acushnet steamed to her final active service home port here in Ketchikan, Alaska. Acushnet's Alaska service will more appropriately be addressed by her final commanding officer, Captain Frankfurt. You know, Admiral Colvin's presence here today really speaks to the significant contributions that Acushnet has had in advancing mission execution in the District 17 area of responsibility. Thanks, shipmate, for being here. There is one Alaska highlight that I'd like to note. 4 short years ago, Acushnet assumed the title Queen of the Fleet, following the decommissioning of cutter stores. And as you have just witnessed, the mantle of Queen of the Fleet has just been passed to Smilax. Shipmates, there's a special relationship that exists between ship and sailor, especially a ship with as long and distinguished a service as Acushnet. Acushnet's sustained performance over 67 years is a testament to the closeness of that relationship between cutter and crew. and I know that each and every sailor who served in Acushnet takes great pride in that now legendary accomplishments of that cutter and those crew. In the words of one of Acushnet's shipmates, then BM3 short, and I think he's serving on the East Coast now, it's now gratifying to know that you are doing something so noble. 67 years of dedicated continuous service cannot be recounted in a single day, nor contained within a single speech. For those who served in this Queen of the Fleet, laboring on her decks and in her engine room, I know that you will always treasure your time aboard her and your many, many, many special memories. So today, we honor the last crew of Acushnet, but by symbolic extension, we also honor the service of all past Acushnet sailors. XO, please call the ship's company to attention.
Aye, sir. Ship's company, Tan Hut. The Commandant of the United States Coast Guard takes pleasure in presenting the Coast Guard Unit Commendation to Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet for service as set forth in the following citation. For exceptionally meritorious service from July 2009 to March 2011, while completing a rich legacy of service to the United States that has spanned more than 6 decades. Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet consistently demonstrated operational excellence, conducting missions that spanned over 42,000 nautical miles through the Gulf of Alaska and Bering Sea, ranging from southeast Alaska to the western Aleutian Islands and north to the Arctic Circle. During her 5 major deployments, Acushnet conducted 165 at-sea boardings, logged over 2,500 hours of critical habitat surveillance, and 21 days of coverage on the United States maritime boundary line in the Bering Sea. Acushnet's at-sea law enforcement efforts accounted for 45% of the 17th Coast Guard District's major cutter boardings. The crew's aggressive enforcement efforts identified 34 major safety violations on commercial fishing vessels, including especially hazardous conditions that resulted in 4 voyage terminations for safety. Acushnet worked to improve Alaska fisheries beyond basic law enforcement, embarking National Marine Fisheries agents and Marine Safety Detachment Kodiak personnel. Acushnet conducted numerous voluntary commercial fishing vessel safety violations, visited seafood processing plants, and educated local fleets on complex Alaska fisheries regulations. Her crew improved the ship's efficiency by optimizing engine performance and developing an innovative computer program that more effectively positioned the cutter for operations, which together resulted in a 16% reduction in diesel fuel consumption, saving nearly $400,000. Acushnet's long service to the people of Alaska was exemplified in the outreach efforts of her crew, ranging from community service in her home port, recruiting in outlying southeast Alaska villages, and a district-wide display by the outreach during the Operation Arctic Crossroads. The professionalism, pride, and devotion to duty displayed by the officers and crew of Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. The operational distinguishing devices authorized for the Commandant, Manson K. Brown, Vice Admiral, United States Coast Guard, Commander, Pacific Area.
You know, as I came onto the base today and I looked over at Acushnet and marveled at her accomplishments, I think we can all take a lesson away from her. She succeeded because of the strength of her steel and the reliability of her machinery, but she also thrived because of the dedicated men and women who served in her. Whether they wore Coast Guard, ODUs, Working Blue, or Navy dungarees, Acushnet's crew sweated, toiled, or labored to ensure that the ship was ready to answer all bells. So I want to say to the men and women of Acushnet's crew, past and present, on behalf of the Commandant and all members of Team Coast Guard, and all of the countless mariners you saved and assisted, and all of the citizens of the great state of Alaska and patriots throughout America, I express bravo Zulu to you for your valiant service. I want to thank you for helping, saving, and strengthening for over 67 years. Captain Frankfurt, thanks also to you and the other assembled commanding officers for leading your crews in such fine and distinguished fashion. Congratulations to you, Mark, on being nominated by your crew for the prestigious Captain John G. Witherspoon Award for Inspirational Leadership. Godspeed to you and your crew as you potentially take Acushnet on her last voyage under U.S. Coast Guard control. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming today to witness this very important day in the life of this now legendary ship. May God bless you all. Semper Paratus.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Captain Mark Frankfurt, last commanding officer, Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet.
Admiral Brown, Admiral Colvin, Admiral Ostabo, Acushnet shipmates past and present, family and friends of the Coast Guard, and good afternoon. I am honored and humbled to address you today on this occasion that is all at once a solemn farewell to Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet, a celebration of the life of this great ship, and most importantly and most fittingly, a tribute to those who brought her to life and sustained her over her many years of service. There is a lot of ground to cover, and that is a lot of ground to cover in one ceremony, and to truly do justice to this great ship and her many crew over the years, we would be here all day. Having learned early in my career as a cutterman that there are few things a crew appreciates more at a time like this than brevity, I offer this compromise. First, I will skip the solemn farewell part. After all, no one really wants this to sound like a funeral. Second, I will attempt to demonstrate some good judgment by noting that Admiral Brown did a superb job recounting Acushnet's long and storied career and not try to add to it. Lastly, I will make best use of my time before you to do what is most important: honor Acushnet's crew by noting their outstanding performance of duty and not taking forever to do it. When I received orders to Acushnet, I was then serving as executive officer in another cutter. Like Acushnet, this cutter had a great reputation and an exceptional crew. Not yet having served with my Acushnet shipmates, I guess that while they may be pretty good, I should probably not expect quite as fine a crew as that I was then leaving behind. I could not have been more wrong. It would be my great fortune to be captain of a ship with what I now know to be the finest crew in the fleet. Now I realize in hearing that you may be thinking, of course you would say that, you're the captain. Well, let me assure you that it is true. In 22 years of service, I have seen fair crews, good crews, and excellent crews. So when I say this crew is the best, rest assured it's true. I know what I'm talking about. In our time together, Acushnet has sailed the length and breadth of Alaska, a state that when superimposed on a map of the lower 48 stretches from the east coast to the west coast, and then some. That includes patrols from our home here in southeast Alaska, across the Gulf of Alaska, out the Aleutian Island chain, to the United States-Russia maritime boundary line in the Bering Sea, up to the Arctic Circle, and everywhere in between. During those patrols, our bread and butter was maritime law enforcement, specifically at-sea fisheries and commercial fishing vessel safety boardings. In that work, I humbly but proudly note that Acushnet was exceedingly effective. While many larger cutters might conduct 20 boardings in 90 days, Acushnet would complete more than 40 in about half that time. I say that not to compare Acushnet to other units, but to highlight the excellence of the crew you see assembled here. Permit me now to offer some specific observations, one department at a time. In the engineering department, we are blessed with a team of experts who kept the Coast Guard's oldest cutter operating with a level of reliability that is difficult for some of our newest cutters to match. During our most recent deployment in January and February of this year, she passed a full power trial with flying colors, a feat that many far younger ships find daunting. Far from coasting to the end of the ship's service life, Acushnet's engineers were constantly improving our plant, overhauling equipment, fine-tuning it, and making it better than it needed to be. Every in-port period, the engineer officer would proudly explain to me that not only had all of the ship's routine maintenance been completed, but also several major projects to improve our reliability, from reconnecting the forepeak tank to our water supply, to overhauling and improving the steering gear, and pretty much every system in between. The operations department was a model of expertise and excellence. They planned dozens of transits, laid track lines all over the place, and then did it over and over again as our plans changed during each deployment. They ensured that our suite of communications equipment, computers, and other mission-critical electronics were always available and operating. If one communications channel failed, they had 2 others ready to go. Further, always looking for any gadget, computer program, or information system that might help us operate more efficiently and effectively, I was constantly bugging them to try something new. Although I will admit to being very hard to please, I can say that their ingenuity and creativity in meeting those challenges never failed to impress, and far more often than not produced results better than I could have imagined. A ship's supply department is usually in the unenviable position of not ever being noticed, unless something gets really messed up. Here in Alaskan waters, it doesn't work that way. There are so many challenges for our cooks, storekeepers, health service technician, and yeomen that their work is forced out front and center every day. From ordering critical parts and supplies over a scratchy satellite phone connection, and as if by magic having them appear in a remote Alaskan port the next day, to accomplishing the myriad of personnel paperwork that makes the military run, despite being 4 time zones removed from Washington, and having an internet connection that makes dial-up seem fast, to somehow getting great chow served in the midst of rough seas that often throw sailors off their feet, to providing medical care thousands of miles from the nearest hospital. This supply department got noticed, but in a very good way. Last but not least, deck department was critical to Acushnet's success, both for their work in port and underway. At home in Ketchikan, Deck Force, which combines a cadre of bosun mates with a large number of the Coast Guard's newest junior enlisted members, maintained rescue and survival equipment, painted and preserved the ship's hull and weather decks, and performed many other tasks to prepare Acushnet for deployments. Underway, they reliably stood the watches on the bridge and performed lookout duties in the bitter cold and damp Alaska weather. When it came time to conduct boardings, they skillfully launched, recovered, and piloted Acushnet's small boats in the most challenging conditions faced by any cutter, getting a hazardous job done dozens upon dozens of times over and over again without a single mishap. I hope in those few paragraphs that I captured for you at least a little bit of what this great crew does every day. For in the end, while we claim to be celebrating Acushnet, the ship, today, what we really mean to celebrate is the great crews that day in and day out made her a great ship. Soon we will be tasked to, and I quote, dispose of Acushnet in some manner that is likely, and that it is likely that the steel and machinery that make up the ship will continue to sail in some capacity. So while you may see this hull again someday, rest assured without this crew and the many great shipmates who went before them, it will be just some ship, and not Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet. I should probably end here, but there is a bit more that needs to be said. In a word, that is thanks. Normally, this would be part of a change of command speech. However, being the last captain of Acushnet, I will not have that occasion to express my gratitude. Let me start with our Coast Guard shipmates on board the base here in Ketchikan, who provide our moorings and many, many critical services, from administrative and supply support to industrial work, safety and environmental services, electronic support, and medical care. Your work is very much appreciated. Thank you. To our friends in the community of Ketchikan, I offer thanks for giving us a place to call home and welcoming us as members of your community. The city and borough governments, the federal and state agencies, the schools and businesses, along with our fellow citizens, helped make Ketchikan a great place to live. To Admiral Brown and the Pacific area staff, we appreciate your leadership and support. Most notably, the Cutter staff was great to work with. They always knew when to ask questions, offer advice, provide a gentle nudge in the right direction, and even when to simply let us alone so we could concentrate on getting the job done. To Admiral Colvin and the 17th District staff, although on an organizational chart we are not a D-17 unit, your staff always treated us like part of the family. We received great support every time we sailed on patrol for you, and I especially want to thank the enforcement staff for their expert guidance in helping us accomplish our complex fisheries mission. To the many fine shipmates who served in Acushnet over the years, every one of you played a part in building Acushnet's 67-year record of excellence. My shipmates and I wouldn't be able to do what we do today had you not done your job so well over the years. To our spouses who are left behind each time we deploy, we know we couldn't do it without you. Our careers as cuttermen would not be possible without your love and devotion, and our families couldn't survive without your ability to do it all while we were at sea. I offer special thanks to our ombudsman over the past 2 years, Amber Levinson, for all of her hard work on behalf of our families. As the captain, I am especially indebted to my wonderful wife, Janice, and my daughter, Anna, who have made great sacrifices, moved all over the country in order for me to pursue a seagoing career, and in particular, this assignment. Lastly, I offer my personal thanks to each and every one of my Acushnet shipmates. My executive officers, Lieutenant Commander Dave Arrett and Lieutenant Commander Reno Ecklord, you were both models of organizational efficiency and excellence, and were great sources of wise counsel for me when it was time to make big decisions. My senior department heads, Lieutenant Lee Davis and Lieutenant Kirk Fistick, your enthusiasm, professionalism, and tireless efforts were a source of inspiration and, of course, great results. My wardroom, you were a great group to sail with and work with, and I will very much miss our time together in Acushnet. Chief Petty Officers, you were the model of deck plate leadership and can-do spirit. While I am aware of much of your great work, please also accept my thanks for all the times you led and sacrificed, unseen by me, to get the mission done. And lastly, to my crew, I have great respect for the awesome talent you represent, and am forever in your debt for all of your hard work and dedication. Shipmates, as I mentioned before, this ceremony is really all about you, and it is fitting that I conclude my remarks by thanking you. My time as commanding officer in Acushnet has been, without a doubt, the most challenging and rewarding assignment in my career. I know full well that I survived the challenges and enjoyed the rewards of this assignment only with the help of your professionalism, dedication, and undying support. The uninitiated understand shipmate to be a quaint nautical term, if they even are aware of it at all. You and I know better, and it truly describes how I feel about each and every one of you. Thank you, shipmates. I will now read the decommissioning order.
Ship's Company, Tan Hut.
From Commandant to Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet. Subject, operating facility change order. You are directed to decommission Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet on 11 March 2011. Following a ceremony at home port, place Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet in commission special. Following final disposition, place Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet out of commission in reserve. XO, make preparations to decommission Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet.
Aye, Captain. Guests, please be seated. As each crew member departs the ship, I will read their name and hometown. Lieutenant William Davis, Kodiak, Alaska. Lieutenant J.G. Emily Marr, Eyre, Mass. Chief Warrant Officer Steve Nelzine, Johnson, Oregon. Chief Corey Cora, Silver Springs, Nevada. Chief Michael Modisette, Imperial Beach, California. Chief Matthew Diamond, Schoharie, New York. EM1 Adam Roderson, Clearwater, Florida. MK1 David Roud, Dearborn Heights, Michigan. MK1 Gordon Hurd, Southgate, Michigan. DC1 James Newmeyer, Bonners Ferry, Idaho. EM2 Isaac Nolden, Branson, Missouri. EM3 Travis Laparle, St. Clair, Michigan. DC3 Casey Brooks, Marcus, Iowa. DC3 Johnson Schmidt, Smith Center, Kansas. EM3 Ezra Heshin, Ashland, Virginia. EM3 Peter Hernandez, Santa Barbara, California. DC3 Matthew Robbins, Woodstock, Georgia. MK3 David Evans, Tallahassee, Florida. Seaman Brock Trumbull, Bowling Green, Ohio. Lieutenant Kirk Fistick, Charlotte Hall, Maryland. Ensign Matt Isbicki, Lisbon, Connecticut. BMC John Moreland, Fort Myers, Florida. FSC William Hall, Vail, South Dakota. OS1 Jeremy Gall, Snohomish, Washington. SK1 Charles Anderson, Wasilla, Alaska. YN1 Dennis Schnarr, Blythe, California. HS1 Damon Lawson, Lubbock, Texas. BM1 Matthew Oliveira, Fall River, Mass. BM2 Joshua Tallis, Wilmersdorf, Pennsylvania. ET2 Michael Levinson, Tarpon Springs, Florida. OS2 Seth Tromer, Schertz, Texas. BM3 Jonathan Benvenides, Houston, Texas. IT3 Josh McMullen, Thackerville, Ohio, Oklahoma. ET3 Eric Perry, Redlands, California. OS3 Jeff Smith, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Ensign Jose Raffles, Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. BMC Kevin Jackson, Ontario, Oregon. BMC Gregory Keating, Irvine, California. BM1 Sean Stone, Woodbridge, Virginia. BM2 Christian Madera, New York, New York. Seaman Stephen Porter, Phoenix, Arizona. Seaman Ian McCracken, Canton, Ohio. Seaman Christopher Ault, Philo, Illinois. Seaman Torrin Burke, Windsor Locks, Connecticut. Seaman Justin Heilman, Rockville City, Iowa. Seaman Ted Miserman, Snellville, Georgia. Seaman Jacob Coulter, Redwood City, California. Seaman Michael Kennedy, Annapolis, Maryland. Seaman Michael DeFrancisco, Smithtown, New York. Seaman Connor Uroff, Whittier, California. And Seaman Dax Fegley, Keller, Texas. Report.
Sir, all security laws today. Running lights have been extinguished. Cannonballs have been removed. Cannon has been fired.
Very well.
Both have been read. Doors locked.
Very well.
Sir, all rashes will be committed. The Galvin found that the Galvin fire is out. Ship's phenomenal allowed on down. And the ship's secure.
Very well.
Sir, this has to be locked. Closed, secure, or allowed to be secure.
Very well. Captain, Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet is ready for decommissioning, sir.
Very well. I'm on request permission to decommission Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet.
Very well, Bravo Zulu, on 67 years of noble service. Proceed with the decommissioning.
Will the guests please rise? And salute. Ready? 2. Please be seated. Ship's company, parade rest. Presentation detail, front and center. Chief Jackson, Petty Officer Rogerson, front and center. In keeping with tradition, the commissioning pennant is presented to the commanding officer, Captain Mark Frankfurt. The National Ensign to the crew member with the most years of service, BMC Kevin Jackson. And the Union Jack to the crew member with the most time aboard, EM1 Adam Roderson.
Admiral, Coast Guard Cutter Acushnet is decommissioned.
Very well.
XO, charge the crew to carry out their orders.
Aye, aye, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise for the playing of Semper Paratus and the departure of the official party. Ship's company, Tan Hut. Now, Commander, Pacific Area, and Commander, Defense Force West departing. Now, Acushnet departing. Now, Smilax departing. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. You are invited to attend a reception in the Crow's Nest at the top of the hill, beginning in a few moments. Department heads, take charge of your departments.